So today we have a great topic. I'll go ahead and just hand it over to Heather Lehman. She's been a speaker of ours in the past, right? So welcome back. This webinar is being recorded, so if you do miss any part of it, you can review on events.bbcommunity.org. You can also sign up for additional webinars and also view past webinars as well. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Heather.
Great, thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. I just want to make sure you guys can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. And it's big, it's full screen, right?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Sometimes the way it looks to me is not the way it looks to you, so I was just making sure. So let me go back out really quick. So today we're talking about stress. This is a webinar that I put together, you know how nobody knows when it is. Really now a couple of months ago. I was in the middle of creating a financial well-being, and then COVID-19 hit. And so I was trying to figure out a way that I could give back because I do a lot of behavior change and stress management in my company. So I designed this, and it's really been interesting as all of these different phases seem to evolve. Like then there's different levels of information that we need, but hopefully you'll find it helpful. I did put a handout in the chat, so you can download that. Again, you don't need it to follow along, but again, like as we are referring to like different exercises that you can do, then it'll be helpful that you actually have it all written out. Because again, like sometimes I will think later like, oh, there was a thing and I was going to, and then I can't remember. So just gives you a little piece of reference. So today we're going to talk about easing frustration when you see old unhealthy habits start popping up again. So I wrote a book on emotional eating, and that was one thing that even for me, I was like, so I need to eat all of the food all day, right? And a lot of my friends and I talked about the eating, the drinking, the shopping. So we're going to discuss that today if you're trying to get a handle on that. And then let go of your previous day-to-day expectations and get more comfortable with your current reality. Learn proven stress management techniques and how to implement them as soon as possible. So just a little background on me. Again, I wrote a book, Don't Eat It, Deal With It, your guidebook on how to stop eating your emotions. I think that's been 6 years ago. And then I started creating courses and working in corporate wellness. So I have 4 and 6 week courses where I really help people with the behavior aspect. My background, I have been in fitness and wellness for over 30 years, and extensively as a health coach, and then working with companies on their well-being strategy. And you know, I've just talked to so many people over time, and so I wanted to have like those real aspects of what the actual obstacles are and to help people move past the obstacles. So again, my Mindful Money Matters course that I've been working on this spring has been very interesting. So giving financial advice in December of last year is pretty different than it is right now. So it's been interesting to kind of pivot and make sure that, you know, I'm meeting people where they are, which, you know, is in a lot of uncertainty. So again, I have provided a lot of coaching, and I really love working with people one-on-one and working with companies to help give real solutions, because working in the world of wellness, a lot of it is like, did you know that you should eat less and move more? I'm like, oh my, I hadn't thought, thank you. Maybe I should have a salad, when really what we want is tacos. So how to change those behaviors kind of from the inside out. So let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to talk about the costs of stress. So we've all got the chat, and I've got the chat pulled up, and I think it'd be really, really interesting. And especially since COVID-19 hit and everybody's life was very changed, and I'm looking at kind of where everybody is from. And I know that there are different levels of restrictions still now, and it looks different in different areas of the country. But when we talk about costs of stress, it's really important to know for you, me not handling my stress as effectively as I could, what does that cost me? So go ahead and type in the chat. And it could be I'm pretty grumpy with the people that I work with, or maybe the people that I'm in my house with 24/7. Or, you know, I know that because I'm so stressed out, I am not sleeping at all. So then I'm more tired during the day. When we're tired during the day, what do we end up doing more of? More caffeine and more sugar. Or my stress is just making me eat so much, or my one cocktail a night habit turned into three. So let's see. So I've got insomnia, and I will say from doing this webinar many times, insomnia is the number one complaint that people have, of not being able to either sleep well, fall asleep, stay asleep, and then that kind of that drag the next day is really getting to people. So anybody else? Anybody have any costs? Too much coffee, teeth clenching and grinding. Yes, that's one of those things where even like you're like, I think I'm holding it together pretty good, but your subconscious is like, no, you're not. Like it's really getting to you one way or another. Stress eating and not sleeping, causing a negative attitude, snacking too much, afternoon craving for ice cream, drinking wine too late. Yes, yes, yes. Uh, and again, I mean, these are all really common. And I think we all have a little corner of shame for all of these habits that, you know, we kind of are either fallen into or fallen back into. But I think, you know, hopefully it's nice that you can see everybody else's replies and really see that like this is really global. This is really what everybody is doing. So ease frustration when you see old unhealthy habits pop up again. So the things that you may have licked at one point really do come bouncing back when the stress is so out of the ordinary. So our discomfort of how we are feeling really deep down inside really creates a need for us to distract from that feeling and then go back to all of these other habits. So they may be things again that you have really kicked before and now are a problem, or you've picked up a brand new one. So I want to go through kind of the cycle of stress because I think it's helpful to understand where these distractions really come from. And if you look at this whole piece, we always start with the perception. So it's really the perception of a stressor. And I will just use COVID examples because that's where we are. So someone might be more sensitive to stress about money. And I will say that is me. I opened a gym in 2008. And if anybody was self-employed in 2008, they can do that. Ooh, that seems like a really bad idea. And it was. So, you know, lost everything, lost the house, lost the business, lost the savings. So for me, when anything volatile happens in our economy, my first go-to is like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be living in a cardboard box. So that volatility creates stress for me. Where there are other people who really don't have that stress around money, that they might be really stressed about illness. And they're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want to get this. I don't want my family to get this. But it really just depends on, you know, you as a person. Freedom might be really important. So as somebody who's self-employed, you're used to kind of doing your own thing, and I can do it that way. And it really, really depends. But that's why it's really important, because you can watch other people, because even in our own family, I can see the people who are really afraid of illness are the ones that have, they're sending me links and here's what you can do and here's what to be afraid of and here's why you should be worried. And then, you know, like myself, where I'm like, let's study the financial aspect of this. Like, let's get our ducks in the rows. So really the perception of different people causes these very different reactions we're all hearing. So, and your reaction creates emotion. So it may just be straight up fear. It might be anger. It might be envy if you're seeing people doing well, but you feel like you're not doing well. It could be sadness. It could just be overwhelm. But it causes these feelings, and feelings are they're only chemical, but you know, these chemical reactions throughout your body. So you can just feel it all over. You know, if you're angry, you know, you might feel, you know, my face is hot, or if you're sad, you can kind of feel it in your chest. So it's really important to understand like these perceptions drive these emotions. And then most of us are like, no thanks. I'm really not interested in feeling this emotion at all. So I'm going to scoot on out of here and leave this behind and find my most favorite distraction. because I don't like that feeling. So therefore, I don't want to feel it. And this is all so subconscious. We usually don't sit around doing this, but we get uncomfortable. And so we're like, oh, let's find something really comfortable. Maybe that's, watching 8 hours of Netflix. Maybe it is eating a pizza. Amazon, need we talk about Amazon at this time? So we have all these distractions we can turn to. Problem is, the initial stress is still there. Now we've created secondary stress because usually our distractions don't make us feel great about ourselves, because it might just be if I'm snacking all the time, well, I'm almost 50, so physiologically my body is like, I'm going to hold on to these calories until we need them again. So jeans and zippers and things are sort of out of the question right now if you're really snacking. Or it could be the secondary stress of spending too much money. You might feel bad about that. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Nobody feels great after a bottle of wine in the morning. So then I'm kind of dragging and it takes me a while. So it's the secondary stressors that really cause us problems as well. But also it's really important to understand is that we never did anything with that stress except for stuff it down. Then it tends to come out sideways. So that's when we might be a little grumpy. We might be a little short. We can't really sleep. So it's really important to understand when we look at this whole cycle of stress, all of the different phases. And it's just important, I always think, if you're trying to change your behavior, to know in the context of where it's coming from, because we look at the distractions. And I will say my life in fitness and wellness, I get paid to help people with their distractions. But the truth is, we've got to go all the way back to the perception piece to help get a handle on our stress so that our distractions aren't as important as they are now. So anybody identifying with any of these, you can go ahead and type in the chat. But again, we've got technology, scrolling. Netflix, are you still watching? I had thought they might get rid of this for COVID, but yes, I'm still watching. It could be gambling, the trophy, like that's achievement. Some people, there are some, not very many, but that are like, I'm going to get this certification right now. I'm going to do all of these other things. And, they're using it, very quickly and feverishly to accomplish and do good. Then there's all of the shopping that we could be doing. And then of course we've got all the food. Am I sweet? Am I savory? Maybe I had some sweet, maybe now I need some savory. It could be a little relationship drama. Maybe I'd like to pick a fight today and see if I can worry about that instead of worrying about how I really feel. And of course our friends in the corner, a little beer, a little wine, a cocktail, a cigarette, pills, all of these things. So it's really, really interesting to see that these distractions, and these are the ones, again, that people focus on. But again, if you remember the cycle of stress, it starts way far away. And just of the comments, yes, wine every night. So true, wine and too much screen time. Again, just trying to zone out and not deal with the feelings that we have. So one thing that is really helpful is to look at okay, what am I running from anyway? What is this feeling? And I made this list a while ago, and it's really interesting to see how I have kind of rolled through different feelings. But go ahead and tell me in the chat too, what is it that you feel like is coming up the most that you are like, I don't want to feel this way? Do I feel anxious? Do I feel untethered? Am I distant because I'm actually not seeing a lot of people that I like or care for? Am I just really bored? Am I stuck in kind of a worst case scenario, dramatic reaction? Do I feel trapped and cooped up? Do I feel hopeless? This isn't going to get any better. Am I afraid? Do I just feel very restless? And I will say for a while, I felt very untethered, like the red balloon kind of floating along, but it's not taking off, but it's not laying on the ground. I felt like that because everything was just, so different. And then I didn't have any kind of routine. And so I just felt really lost like that. So we've got disconnected and unmotivated. Absolutely. Worry about the repercussions of the crisis and the close down in the future. Restless. Yes, there are a lot of different feelings that come up for different people. And again, it's important to realize, depending on that kind of perceptions. Stress. So understanding And this also takes kind of a beat because sometimes you will actually have to sit with your discomfort to be able to identify it. But sometimes we're just like, no, I'll get to that feeling in a minute because there's got to be something new on Instagram I haven't seen yet today. So we really like just kind of taking a few minutes here and there to explore, like, how do I really feel? Because I'm in the middle of a huge project. So procrastination on top of stress with time, with deadlines. So then I am, like, well, maybe I can do this for a little while. And then I feel so overwhelmed and stressed because it's like Tuesday's the day, you really have to have this buttoned up. So those feelings I don't like either of. So easy to run from. One thing that is really, really important right now is to be really gentle with yourself. That it's an extremely extraordinary time. Obviously, my children are 17 and 19, and when this first started happening, they kind of were asking questions about when this has happened before, and I was like, "Oh no, this has not ever happened before." But understanding that this is not just like, oh, my schedule's a little lighter, got a little free time, that it is like a huge global event. But to spend some time trying to explore these feelings that are coming up. And you can also kind of think back of what have I ever done to replace these behaviors. So when I look at emotional eating, I've put several things in place. Like one of the biggest parts of my book is journaling, because again, I have to figure out what I'm feeling in the first place. So there was a place where I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. Um, and also with the snacking, this is like wellness 101, but I started using bowls for my snacks because for whatever reason, any kettle corn based snack has been very delightful at this time. Popcorners, the actual kettle corn. But finding bowls again, don't eat it out of the bag. Which it's like, oh yeah, I think somebody told me that in 1985, but now I've got it. So I really had to look back of like, okay, like what have I done in the past? And instead of a snack before bedtime, can I have a chamomile tea? And really just the process of making the tea and unwinding to get ready for bed. I don't really need something to eat because I'm not hungry. I just ate dinner. So I think it can be really helpful to look at like what's worked before. Many of my friends, we've had all the booze conversations, and their solutions have been from, you know, going back to a standard pour. My fiance had what I called the pandemic pour for a while for his wine, because I was like, this is so close to the top, and it used to be down here at the restaurant pour. Like, can you carry it? Do you have to sippy it before you move? So really like, oh, okay, give myself, a standard pour, or I'm limiting myself to one drink a night. But it is really helpful to try to start, giving yourself some guidelines of, this has been helpful in the past, when things have gotten a little hairy. And then you can really take your next best step. Again, it doesn't have to be anything revolutionary. You don't have to tell yourself like, I'm going to start doing CrossFit in my backyard, or I'm going to throw out all the flour and the sugar and anything white in the house right now. Nay, no, really be gentle and just take that next best step. One thing that is very difficult for most of us is this quest for control, because again, generally speaking, we are in control of most parts of our day. Like things that would out of control, like, oh my gosh, I can't control this traffic, or oh, this interest rate went up, or oh, I lost this contract. Those are things that level. But freedom, like, oh, you can go wherever, you can do your regular routine, like that, not being allowed to do those things um, is so foreign for most of us. And so what we tend to do is try to figure out like, okay, like what can I control, or this feeling of the lack of freedom that we want to distract from feeling trapped or feeling hopeless. So that's one reason why we really, really run to our distractions, because not having control over your life. Because if you look at stress management throughout the different levels of a company, the people on the lowest tier are usually the most stressed, which correlates to how much control they have over their job. I mean, the scope of it, what they're actually doing, what timelines, all of those things are controlled by a less stressed out tier that is higher. So it's always really interesting to see because they have more control and they're less stressed. So the people with less control are more stressed. So for most of us, it really, it's easier for me to see then like, oh, okay, because I don't have the freedom that this feeling of being out of control is really driving me to distract myself. And one piece that I have said from the get-go, and I heard it on a podcast. If nobody follows Brene Brown, you should. It's Renee with a B, Brene Brown. She has a podcast called Unlocking Us. And she's had really fantastic guests that correlate to COVID, really. And it really has been nice because at the very beginning, she said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I was like, ooh. And Brene would say, y'all are right. But it, really kind of getting in that mind frame, because we've had so many sudden changes. And it was like, we're not popping back outside. This isn't going to be over in a hot minute. We really are in a marathon. So I think having that mentality gets you out of that, like really panic, like, okay, I've got to fix this, or like, I'm just waiting, okay, because things are really going to change, I think, on Saturday, and those things aren't going to happen. But if we have that adrenaline fueled reaction, and if we're living on cortisol, which cortisol, our stress hormone, does the tire type of fat around our belly, and it also keeps us up at night. It's not a good one. You don't want that one. So settling down into, okay, so long term, I've got to play my long game here. And that's where really focusing on creating some kind of routine and creating a normalcy can help us get away from needing those distractions. So I think that even if it's, clearly it's an altered routine, because, some of you, again, like looking at the locations, aren't leaving the house, and some of you can, but it is not going to be the same. So we really have to create like, okay, well, what's normal, and what's normal for today, because normal might look different in a month, and it will hopefully look different in 6 months, in a year. But how do I keep a routine? And it can include the healthy habits, but also just a routine. Bedtime, when do I get up? Do I take a stretch break? Am I working out? Am I drinking water? Am I trying to eat healthier? Those types of routines can be really, really helpful, because the way that our mind works with finding solutions all the time, or thinking about options, is very emotionally taxing. So if I don't have a clue what I'm having for lunch, sometimes just it can be emotionally taxing. Like, well, we could do this, I could do this, or I can go there. So maybe even the night before of, okay, here's my schedule for tomorrow. I'm getting up at this time. Maybe I'm going for a walk. Maybe I'm going to do some stretching. Maybe I'm going to do a little workout in the backyard. Then I will start working here. And then I know I'm having this for lunch, and I know I'm having this for dinner. Because generally, as a health conscious choice, you always want to have your meals kind of at least thought out. Don't need to prep it for the next day. And that's something that you don't have to think about. So that can be something that really takes stress off your plate as well. So just as a concept, really starting to get into like, okay, well, this is going to be a marathon, and I don't need to panic all of the time. And I will say, from going through a financial disaster before and building myself back up, it absolutely was a marathon. And I remember distinctly like several different points where I was so panicked, but then just remembering the options and opportunity we do have for renewal is really helpful for me to remember. Because when I get into my like, oh my gosh, we're going to live in a cardboard box moments, then I really get into like, you have rebuilt, and you will rebuild again, I think is really, really helpful long term. So these are on the handout, so you don't have to write them down, but just observe what behaviors have escalated out of panic, and really spend some time trying to identify what feelings that I'm trying to distract from. Because even if you have a general, like I feel stressed or overwhelmed, like there are deeper answers in there. And we'll talk about a few things that you can do in a minute to help with that. And determine any previously successful steps that have that you have done to replace that behavior, and then really try to take your next gentle step. Again, not a huge step, a baby step. So let go of previous day-to-day expectations and get more comfortable with your current reality. So the stages of grief. This I think is really, really important. And I think people are so much more cognizant of this now, but there really is a massive grieving process going on. And I don't know anyone who's not going through it on some level. And it can be, it might be, as awful as grieving a loss, and actually a loss of a loved one, but it can be loss of income, it can be loss of opportunity. I will say in our house, my 19-year-old came home from Northern Arizona University. He was there his freshman year, living on his own, got a girlfriend, having fun. Nope, you are back home, going back and forth with your childhood 50-50 custody schedule again. And so we really had to have a lot of conversations about kind of grieving of like, because it was just, coming home for spring break. Like, no, you're not going back until August, hopefully. So I think it's really have been important to understand like there is this denial. I think we're still a little in the bargaining phase, and the depression and acceptance. And again, if you've ever been through grief, like these are not like a linear, like, oh, here I am today, that it's, up and down, up and down. But let's just try here and tell me, like, what are the things that you're really grieving? And this could be, again, financial loss. You might have missed graduations. I was supposed to get married in April in Belize. I did not. So we had to do a little work around that. Had to have a Supai hiking trip. Takes forever on a waiting list to do that. Not doing that. I was supposed to take my son to his first college visit, my younger son to go visit Cal Poly, see if he wants to go there. So there are a lot of little things. So you guys tell me, is it the bigger things, or it could be really grieving just the liberty to go work at Starbucks for 2 hours, as much as it, sounds in the grand scheme of things, not that important, but it could be a huge thing for you. Like that might have been kind of your getaway. So someone said the social interaction, like absolutely. Because even, I grew up in the Midwest, I live in Arizona, like just going to the grocery store used to be, a very, oh, hello, hi. And now you're just like, oh, nope, oh, back it up. So it's not even the same type of social interaction when you're out, because you're like, should we hug? Nope, no hug. Oh, and it's really like changed all of those dynamics. Anybody else like have any pieces that they are grieving? Human touch, absolutely. There's like, it's really so interesting talking to a lot of people. There are groups that people who've been alone, and then there are groups people who have been with their families. And I think it's kind of like these people want to be these people and these people want to be these people. um, but I think just the absolute human to human contact. I know my sons went and saw their grandparents this weekend, and no hugs and eating outside together. And I think that was really, really tough all around. So when we're looking at grief, and then this wrestling for control does absolutely create exhaustion, frustration, and it really prolongs us moving over to acceptance. So when you're trying to move through grief and trying to really get to the point of acceptance and coming to grips with all of these different changes, like eating, drinking, and shopping isn't going to do anything for your pain, but actually taking some time to acknowledge the changes and the feelings helps you move through the pain. Because I always say with pain, like there is no around, there is only through. So taking some time to say, like, you know what? And it doesn't have to be, it's, now I can't get out of bed for 2 weeks, but it really could just be so much as really just saying, like, this part is hard. This is my challenge. This is really difficult, and just acknowledging it to yourself. And if you have been through circumstances where you've gone through a grieving process, really kind of going back and dissecting that can be hard, or can be helpful to get insight. My best friend, when her son was born, she already knew that he was going to be in the NICU for 3 to 6 months when he was born. And she, in our conversation, she was really telling me she used a lot of what she had to do because he ended up being in the NICU for 4 months. So going home, no baby, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and 2 kids at home. But she really used kind of that marathon structure in her mind to help get her through this. And she said that's what she's really applied right now of, you know, this right here is not permanent. It will change. I don't know exactly what it will look like, and getting more comfortable with those unknowns. So on your worksheet, then you can take some time to really think about, like, what am I grieving the most? You know, because what am I trying to drink over, eat over? What's keeping me up at night? And what aspects do you think it would be most helpful to really do some work on and accept? So our last piece, learn proven stress management techniques and how to implement them as soon as possible. So stress management, one big piece of it, again, if you look at that stress cycle, is the perception, starting at the very, very beginning. And it can be extremely helpful to focus on what I can control, because the time spent on things I cannot control, and whether that's when we're opening up, should we open up, what does it look like, what can I do, those things are really, really, really challenging to focus on because I directly cannot influence that at all. My comments that I make online will go nowhere and make a difference. So I think it's really helpful to focus on what you can control. And, you know, your attitude is one of those pieces. And so I have kind of globally really adopt the assume positive intent. So when I hear something and it might have a bit of a tone that I'm not in love with, or wow, I can't believe that actually happened. And again, like, this comes from also living, you know, with 4 people 24/7. I think that assuming that everybody is doing the absolute best that they can right now has been really helpful. Because again, nobody's been through this level of stress before, and everybody is trying their best can be extremely helpful, of something that you can control, in your self-expression. So absolutely, I think being a bright spot for someone. So I have people that I check on often. I have someone I used to work with last week. Her husband passed away. So just, you know, popping in and text, you know, not needing a reply, but just thinking about you. Um, and I did that just yesterday, and she was like, you know, oh, you know, it's been a really hard day. It's good to hear from you. And so you really have no idea who's having a hard time, but then you popping in just to say, hey, sending a funny meme or GIF, whatever it is, might make a big difference to someone. And one of the things in positive psychology that we know really helps you feel better and become happier is doing kind acts for other people. So the self-talk, this is where I've seen some ruthless comments of people really getting down on themselves because, like, I'm not motivated, I feel super lazy, I've gained so much weight, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this. And absolutely, like, your feelings are going to fluctuate minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. And understanding this, 100% normal. And really, like I said before, be gentle, take the next step, but really being kind to yourself can be extremely helpful within your own self talk if you're feeling like you should be doing more than you're already doing. So, the intake piece. So we've already talked about kind of like the wine and the food, but there is so much research about not watching the news because before this, there was plenty of research that showed you that absolutely it does make your stress and your anxiety so much worse if you watch the news. So, you know, you might just have a schedule of, like, I only look at the news maybe at noon because I don't want it to ruin my morning. And I definitely do not want to read it before I go to bed if I'm trying to get better sleep. But it's just something to really think about. Again, you can look it up. There's so much research that talks about anxiety in the news. So in your self-care, what can I control? I really can control my emotional and physical self-care. So I can control how I'm taking care of my body, how I'm taking care of my spirit. So just overall, these pieces, if I could take some of that energy that maybe I'm, really wrestling with these other things that I can't control, what can I focus on? And this is on your handout as well. Like, what is it that I can focus on that I know I can have some type of control with? Oh, somebody's bothering my dog. Maybe it's Amazon. Highly likely. So, stress management techniques. So, we've got physical activity. And with physical activity, and this was my original field of study, there is so much literature about how helpful physical activity is with depression. I mean, it's actually more helpful than taking antidepressants, doing physical activity. I'm not saying do not take your antidepressants at all. I'm just saying research shows that it's extremely helpful. So as we're in this state of like chronic stress, it's so easy just to slip right into massive anxiety and clinical depression. So moving your body, and again, if you haven't been doing much, start small, but again, it could be walks. And if you cannot find free workouts right now, I don't even know what to tell you, because my Instagram, my email box is full. Every gym I've ever belonged to has stuff that's online for free. So you can find a yoga workout that you could do. You can find a 10-minute one. You can find a 45-minute one. So there's a lot of different options. You can do body weight exercises. But again, it might be really helpful. Like if you're really struggling, I do 10 minutes here, 10 minutes at lunch, 10 minutes in the evening. But doing something to move your body can be really, really, really helpful to manage your stress. Nutrition, where is it that I could look at? I might be able to cut back a little bit on my processed foods and have a little bit less sugar. What are my opportunities? Like I said before, chamomile tea before bed, some kind of sleepy time tea instead of having a snack before bed. It really is helpful mood-wise. Sugar does nothing for our mood. So trying to see where I can get some more real whole foods in there and a little bit less of the processed out. So activities that create focus and calm. So meditation, again, tons of free apps. You always start small. If you haven't been a meditator, you can do 3 minutes. Moving up to 5 minutes, but just incrementally trying to do more. There's guided meditation. There are apps that are just timers. Again, YouTube is full of them. So it's really helpful to look around, because what meditation does, because it's you in a meditative state, but it really calms down, because I talked about the cortisol and all of the hormones that get us so ramped up. We get more dopamine and serotonin when we are meditating. So it calms down. So it really works against these kind of endorphin-like reactions. Mindfulness, there's so much research, and mindfulness is really just the practice of being present and being objective. So I'm not judging anything as good or bad. Sorry, somebody just asked for the handout, and there's a link for it, and it'll take you right to it, and you can download it from there as well. So mindfulness really, it isn't like an overwhelming, like, oh, I'm being so mindful, I'm doing this practice. But I remember early on in the grocery stores, and still I don't care for it, but it was really freaking me out that everything was gone and was empty. And I would have to do mindfulness practices in the store because I thought I was going to start crying in the store. Not because there was stuff that I couldn't get, but it was so disconcerting. And so I would focus on my steps. So as I was walking, I would heel toe, heel toe, heel toe. Sometimes I really tune into, because there's always some excellent 70s or 80s jam in your grocery store music, and really tune into the song, and maybe trying to sing the lyrics, something like that. But I really tried to get present, because the fear is just the anxiety of the future, something that is not happening, may not ever happen. So I really encourage you, if you are having trouble with anxiety, to really look at meditation and mindfulness as options. So exercise, I said that already, I'll say it again, really, really helpful the more you consistently move your body. Hobbies, so we've got some time at home still. And most people have hobbies that maybe they've purchased things for and never done anything with. Um, and they don't have to be anything pricey at all. You really don't have to spend a lot of money. But when you're doing a hobby, something you really enjoy, it can be super helpful because it gets you in that meditative state. So sometimes, so maybe you're doing like a watercolor, maybe doing something that's a stitch, I love needlepoint, just such a nerd. But it could just be coloring in one of the fun coloring books. It could be working on the car. It could be woodworking. All of these different options. But when you're doing these are things like that you lose time. That you're like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for half an hour. Super, super helpful for your stress because again, like calms you down. And then it keeps you in the present moment because I have a coloring book. And when I'm coloring, I'm really focused on, making sure the green is in this place, this place, this place, that's all, I'm doing it right, of course. But I think it's really, really helpful because it is very soothing, and puzzles and home projects really kind of fall in the same vein as well. Let me go over to, these are just examples of hobbies. If I showed you in this room how many plants I have, and I won't because there's too much light, it'll blow it all out. But that has been something that I've really been focusing on. Well, everybody in my house already knows it. I do morning rounds to check on my plants. I find it soothing. I find it very helpful because what I'm here for, like this one is a little brown. Is it like I've got a wilted ear on my elephant ear that I just transplanted. Does he need more water? I don't know. I had to research it. So it can be really, really helpful because I'm not worried about money. I'm not worried about work. I'm really just 100% focused on my plants. So it can be a really soothing hobby. But these are just some examples of different things, and maybe you've done them before, and maybe it's time to kind of revisit them, and just something that just takes your mind to what I consider a positive place. Although my elephant ear is stressing me out a little bit, but I think we're going to pull through. But it is something that is not, the current day worries, but it's just, something to focus on. So in the household, pieces I think like are really, really helpful, especially if you're spending so much time, because we've done stuff that's like, some paint touch-ups. I had like 2 buttons that fell off of our duvet cover probably like 5 months ago when they sat on the dresser. So like, why didn't you get your needle and thread and put it back on? And I mean, you would have thought I deserved a parade after I did that. I was like, look at, did everybody see the buttons that I put back on? But it was really helpful because again, like sewing, is a very mindful activity because I'm really just focusing on not putting the needle in my finger and not sewing the comforter into the thread. So doing some little bits and pieces around the house can have that same, concentration element, and it can really put you in a meditative state as well. But it also makes you feel a little cheery because if you are still at home, then it can kind of, brighten things. I mean, even as things, we have those white erasers for like black marks on the baseboards. I mean, you're probably like, boy, this Heather is a party. But I felt better after a while because the black marks looked a lot better because it is your surroundings. And so trying to do some things, again, you don't have to be spending money to do those, but there are some little projects probably that when they're done, you might feel like you have earned a parade as well. So journaling is a huge piece. It's always been a huge piece of my coaching practice. And I follow the 3D is what I created because it what worked best for me. So, and again, all of this is on the handout as well, but really just kind of writing in this kind of fashion. And it's not like, oh my gosh, I have to do it this way, but I'll tell you why I think it's helpful. Writing the details. So this is stuff that's banging around in my head of like, oh my gosh, this person is on my nerves so much, or like, oh, you know what? I think we need to get some tuna, or just little bits and pieces, just all of the things that, again, that you end up thinking about at 3 o'clock in the morning, writing those out. And then the dooms, because I think it's very helpful to dip into what am I afraid of? I don't need to shove it down. I don't need to cover it up. I don't need to get it drunk. I need to see like, what am I afraid of? I am really afraid of the long-term financial repercussions. I am afraid that my business might not bounce back. I'm worried about my spouse's job. I'm worried about my son going back to school. Like whatever that is for you, really trying to spend a little time and write those things out. Then the next part is your desires. What do you want to see? And so it can be really, really helpful. The barking dog is back. Perfect. To spend time on what you want to create in your life. Because most of the time we spend way too much time talking about what we don't want, what we don't like, what is ticking us off. What do you want? I would like to feel more peaceful. I would like to see this piece of my business stay afloat. I would like to spend a little more time, maybe not watching TV with my family, like maybe playing card games. But it's really trying to focus on like so that you can intentionally create something as you move forward. And I like ending on that high note because some people just do the details and dooms and it's really just like a complaining fest. But again, if I have the ability to control all those pieces that we talked about before, my attitude, my self-care, then maybe I need to spend some time writing about what I'm committing to work on those. So that's how I've always had my clients journal. And I think it's been really, really helpful because, again, that last responsibility piece of like, okay, here's what I can take control of today is really, really helpful in overall attitude, I think. So your to-dos. So what is one thing that you can do in each of the areas? What's a little thing of physical activity, and maybe that is desk stretches, I will do 5 minutes of stretches at my desk. Perfect. The nutrition piece, and what activities or hobbies like could you really spend a little time doing? And who can you share your ideas and goals with? I always think it's helpful to have an accountability partner. I mean, literature shows you that when we have kind of a buddy, it is extremely helpful. And my friends and I, my two best friends and I have done this separately because they were really working on the cocktails at night. And then I was like, sugar, let's talk about this. And it was extremely helpful because I really fell out of a lot of my exercise habits because my boxing gym's closed, my other gym's closed. And so like to get it together, but talking to them about it. They're tree of trust people, though. Don't talk to this stuff with people that you can't really trust. And it really helps to have that accountability of, I'd really like to do this. This is important to me. And like, okay, well, let's talk about that in 3 days. Let's see how both of us did. So I think that can be really, really helpful. So my final thoughts, the big takeaways, like this really is a marathon and not a sprint. And I think we're all seeing that more and more. And we don't know if it's a 26-mile marathon, is it 35, is it 40? We just know it's going to be a while. And to really focus on what we can control right here and now. And finding ways to let go of control of the other things that I can't really affect either, and create some focus and a peaceful environment. So 100% within your ability to try to create more focus, to be able to be, and I don't mean productive in that like overachiever sense. I just mean, in things that are important to you, things you want to get done, but that peaceful environment to where I am managing my stress, and give yourself some grace as you move through these feelings and experiences. Because you have your own individual background, your perceptions are going to be different, and you're going to have different reactions than other people. And that's what's really normal. And if you don't like those perceptions or reactions, really give yourself some grace. I mean, this is just not, I always teach kind of like a good, better, best. When I'm talking about our healthy habits. And yeah, when nothing's going on and I've got a full budget, I've got plenty of time, like, sure, I'm doing like best, but we're in good to okay right now. So really do give yourself some grace there and focus on what you can control. And again, like those 5 aspects, really try to keep those in mind of like, okay, here's what, could make a difference in my day. All right, that's all the content that I have. So I will take any questions and I will stay as long as you want. But if you got to get back to work, you need to hop off. Like that's totally fine. Somebody said here we did a company-wide daily 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. stretch with COVID and the work from home change, it stopped. You've motivated me to start it back up again via Zoom. Absolutely. And do you know how many people are like scrambling of like, yes, please? Um, because those types of things are not hard to do, but it's just really the accountability. Now it's scheduled. Now somebody knows I said I was coming. Like that can be really, really, really helpful. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Nothing, anything. Was that my last one? I just want to make sure I didn't miss one. I hope that's my last one. Thank you. And I do webinars periodically, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and Heather Sayers Lehman is, I'm the only one, so it's easy to find me there. So hopefully reach out. And again, as I do more activities, and hopefully the Better Business Bureau will have me back sometime, because I'm always, happy to take some time. And because again, like writing and creating this webinar was so helpful for me, because it was like, oh yeah, oh right. Like just to remember the things that we already know, but just to get back in the habits. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate you being here. And again, just make sure that you grabbed that handout and you have it, so you can have some little daily reminders of some things that you can create some focus on, of the pieces that you can control, and remember, to really make sure that you're being kind to yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heather, for taking time out of your busy day to educate us. I hope everybody takes these tips and really implement them so they will become stress-free, hopefully, and are on their way to become
Yes.
stress-free. There's a lot of challenges up ahead for us, especially the business owners beginning to opening up their business and then handling their employees and then customers as well. So definitely a lot of challenges ahead of us, and we definitely want to make sure that we are stress-free and able to manage that stress. So thank you very much for sharing all those tips with us today. This webinar was recorded, so it will be available on events.bbcommunity.org. And then if you do miss that handout, you weren't able to click on the link. I know some people are dialing in on their phone, so I can email that out to everyone as well. So, but thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Please have a great day and stay safe out there.
Okay. Thank you, guys.